Yo, what's good, you guys? Your boy Ben Mohari here, representing Mohari Nation Sports Podcast. Um, I don't do videos often as much because of life and everything else of that sort. But this topic that I want to discuss about is something that I could not ignore because it's really been digging at my mind for the past couple of days. And before I get into it, I just wanted to give a shout out to LVG for the great live stream that he talked about yesterday in regards to Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, and Luc Longley setting up a tour, basically killing off a lot of the false narratives that was laid on the Last Dance documentary a couple of years ago. Now, here's my whole sense of this whole situation. I had an opportunity to listen to 78, of course, and listen to Nightcap, this time with Gilbert Arenas, when they talked about the whole subject. And there were a lot of things about that subject that really just got my attention to it. Number one, this notion that a lot of these Jordan, fanboys that I'm seeing here is that they all try to rely on the fact that Jordan won all those championships by himself, which is the furthest thing from the truth. The other thing too here is that I really felt that the documentary really gave away a lot of, a lot of false narratives about the team. And more importantly, they left a lot of stories out for that documentary that really could have helped solidify it and made it even stronger. Pretty much put it like this. I've always felt that the documentary from the first episode towards the last was nothing more than a Jordan puff piece to pretty much big up Michael Jordan and pretty much big up who he was as a player and who he was as a marketer. And when I say marketer, I say it into the fact that Jordan was the most marketized superstar pretty much even today. I mean, the Jordan brand shoes are still, making huge sales. Even so, even years and years after his retirement, people still look at Michael Jordan as still the face of the league, which is a very, very troubling thing. But the one thing that I will talk about here is that, when it came to Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, and Luc Longley pretty much speaking their minds about the whole situation, I feel like people are misunderstanding about what they're saying here. The huge thing about this whole situation here is they're killing off the narratives and all this false stories that was placed into the documentary. That's all they're doing. There were a lot of stories in that documentary that were left off there, especially the 94 series between the Knicks and the Bulls, especially when they just primarily focused on Scottie Pippen sitting out the final few seconds of the game when Phil Jackson drew up a play for Tony Kukoc to take the game when he shot instead of Pippen. Remember, it was pretty much a building point to all the frustration that Pippen was going through during his time in Chicago. The fact that he signed the bad contract, which he should have never have signed. The fact that he was not getting a lot of playing time early in his career. The fact that management was pretty much shortchanging him at every turn. It was pretty much a frustration point that finally exploded over. But the fact is, they still had a chance to win the series. If Hugh Hollins doesn't make that bogus call in Game 5, they're up 3-2, and they beat the Knicks again for the fourth straight time, for the fifth time in the last 6 years. But that's besides the point. The one thing that I really got away from the documentary was that they left the narratives that Jordan was pretty much the do-it-all type of superstar, that he was the guy that did everything for the team and he could do no wrong. Now, they did show a lot of the things where Jordan was yelling at his teammates in practice, verbally abusing them, things of that sort. But there was a lot of things off the story off the documentary that they left off, which is really what it kind of lowered down to my value of watching it all over again. The thing that people have to understand here is that Pippen feels, and I'm sure Horace Grant feels, and the way Luc Longley feels, is that Jordan is not giving the proper respect to all the teammates that really helped them win those championships, especially for Scottie Pippen. Now, do I think that Pippen is being a little petty at this point? Yeah, I kind of do. But does he have a point of being petty about it? Yes. The fact is he's angry at the fact that they pretty much portrayed Scottie Pippen as a selfish and condescending type of superstar, which some of it is true, but a lot of it is not true. When you really look at Pippen and where you look at where he stood throughout his career, he did a lot of things for that team that people don't tend to talk about. He was one of the best defensive players in the 90s. You understand? It's a crime that he was never Defensive Player of the Year and Jordan got one. I mean, come on. is a crime. And the fact is that Horace Grant did his part in the first three championships. He was the workhorse for that team, grabbing rebounds, hitting mid-range jump shots. He was a key component in the Bulls' full court press, written up by Johnny Bach. I mean, there were a lot of things on the documentary that they pretty much left off of, and this is why they're doing this tour to try to dispel all the narratives. And I hope they come out and just be straight up honest with it. And one thing that I will say, a lot of these, Jordan fanboys on social media and even on YouTube too, that continuously keep bigging up Jordan, all you're doing is that you're making a very bad narrative about Michael Jordan and that team, and you're dismissing all the people and all the teammates that really did their significance to help Jordan win those championships. If Pippen did not play with Jordan, and the same way goes around, then Jordan doesn't win any championships. People tend to always start at 1991 all the way towards 1998 as the beginning point of his career, neglecting the fact that he got swept, three times. He got swept out of the playoffs against the Bucks in his rookie year. He got swept out of the playoffs against the Celtics in 86 and in 87. Let's keep that in mind. Jordan was pretty much a one-man show. He didn't know how to trust his teammates. All right? Even though he scored 63 points, they still lost to the Celtics. He did not win a single playoff game until around 1988, when they finally beat the Cleveland Cavaliers for the first time to advance in the playoffs. Then they lost to the Detroit Pistons. Then 89, they make the conference finals. And then they lost to the Detroit Pistons. Listen, if you're going to talk about Michael Jordan, you're going to talk about everything about his career, you have to talk about his shortcomings before you get to his championship years. Because that's the important piece of the story. And more importantly, too, people tend to misconstrue the fact that Michael Jordan, was the dominant team in North Carolina. Not understanding the fact that he was only a freshman in that 82 team with James Worthy, with Sam Perkins, you understand? Matt Doherty and also Jimmy Black were seniors for that team. They were seniors before even Michael came in. And James Worthy was the most outstanding player for that 82 tournament. He had a monster game against Georgetown. So we have to be consistent and we have to be honest. Jordan was a great player. Nobody expected him to be the greatest player of all time. There were a lot of legends even back then. They knew how good of a player he was. They didn't anticipate him being a great player. And the fact that people keep using it as a smear campaign to discredit what LeBron James does is really a disservice. The only thing Jordan is a top at is selling a lot of sneakers. But right now, as we currently stand, LeBron James has surpassed Jordan in almost every statistical category other than steals. He's got more points, more rebounds, you understand, more assists, okay? And keep in mind, too, he's played a lot more seasons in the NBA than Michael Jordan. And it's a great thing because Jordan only played 15 seasons and he retired midway through his prime. Then he retired in 98, basically missed about 3 more seasons. Then he came back in Washington and pretty much did nothing. So let's be real about here. We have to be consistent about who Jordan was and his story. He retired midway through his prime after he won the third straight championship. Then he retired again in 98. Then he tried to resurrect the Wizards franchise because he didn't know how to, be patient and build a team. And pretty much we saw what it was. He couldn't lift him to another level. So people have to be honest and consistent when it comes to Michael Jordan and his career. If you don't do that, you're doing yourself a disservice. And people use the 6-0 narrative to try to use it as a smear campaign to discredit any superstar of today and try to discredit what they've accomplished. And that's not right and that's not fair. We can always respect what Jordan has done in his prime. But what he did back then, you understand, was left during the 90s. And what his failures were was left in the 80s. We have to be consistent and we have to be honest with ourselves. Do you understand? And the fact is, Jordan is not going to come out of retirement and try to, catch up with LeBron James in any statistical category. That's never going to happen. So, in conclusion to this, I'm anxious and very interested to hear what Luc Longley, what Horace Grant, and what Scottie Pippen have to say about, the whole Last Dance documentary, and what do they have to say? What were a lot of the things that they felt about the documentary they did not like about it? And we know Luc Longley did not want no parts of this documentary. There were a lot of people that didn't want any parts of being interviewed for the documentary. And when you look back and watching it, there's a good reason why. But it's going to be very interesting to see what all these guys have to say about it. And we know we're not going to hear much of a response from Michael Jordan, because at the end of the day, Jordan feels that he's above everybody. And, he can feel about it any way he wants. But people who know basketball, people who know the game, and people who are not just blinded by, the nostalgia of who Michael Jordan was as a player, they know the truth, and they know how each of those players played a significant role in Jordan and the Bulls winning those championships. And and you cannot deny that for a single bit. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. With that, I'm out. Peace.